The steel screams first, a sound like thunder ripping through metal, echoing across the St. Lawrence River on August 29, 1907, at 5:37 in the afternoon. 86 men stand on the southern cantilever arm of the Quebec Bridge, riveting, welding, walking across beams suspended 150 feet above dark water. The screaming intensifies. One compression cord buckles, then another. In 15 seconds, 19,000 tons of steel, the anchor arm, the cantilever, the partially completed suspended span, twists, fractures, and plunges into the river. The roar carries 6 miles to Quebec City. When the dust settles and the water calms, 75 men are dead. 11 survive with catastrophic injuries. 33 of the dead are Mohawk ironworkers from Kanawake, men who traveled from their reserve near Montreal to build what was supposed to become the longest cantilever bridge span in the world. Their bodies sink into the St. Lawrence alongside the wreckage of ambition. The Quebec Bridge collapse remains the worst bridge construction disaster in North American history. But to understand why 75 men died that afternoon, you must first understand the desperation that built this bridge. Quebec City bleeds commerce in the late 19th century. Every winter, ice chokes the St. Lawrence River, severing the city's economic lifeline. Montreal, 160 miles upstream, already possesses the Victoria Bridge, completed in 1859, connecting it to Western rail networks and American markets. Quebec City has nothing, no bridge, no rail connection across the river, no future. The Grand Trunk Railway system flows through Montreal, bypassing Quebec entirely. Shipping traffic favors Montreal's infrastructure. Quebec's merchants watch their city fade from prominence, strangled by geography and ice. By the 1880s, the economic reality becomes unbearable. Quebec needs a bridge, not for prestige, though that matters, but for survival. In 1887, businessmen and politicians form the Quebec Bridge Company with $1 million in capital and the authority to issue bonds. The company immediately confronts an engineering nightmare. The St. Lawrence River at the proposed crossing point stretches 2 miles wide with water 190 feet deep at its center. Current velocity reaches 9 miles per hour. Tidal ranges swing 18 feet. Winter ice piles 50 feet high, crushing anything in its path. Then no suspension bridge can withstand these conditions. No arch bridge can span this distance. The only solution is a cantilever design, massive steel arms reaching from each shore toward the center, counterbalanced by anchor arms behind them, with a suspended span completing the connection. It will be the longest cantilever bridge ever attempted, 1,800 feet between supports. It will connect Quebec to the Grand Trunk Line, restoring the city's place in North American trade. It will cost everything. If you enjoy this documentary, consider subscribing to our channel. We investigate industrial disasters that changed the world, examining the technical failures and human decisions that led to catastrophe. The cantilever bridge operates on principles of tension and compression. The anchor arm, bolted to massive piers, extends backward from the main support. The cantilever arm reaches forward across the water. The weight of the anchor arm counterbalances the cantilevered section. A suspended span hangs between 2 cantilevers, completing the crossing. The entire structure functions as a balanced system. Every ton of weight on the cantilever must be countered by equivalent force in the anchor arm. The compression cords along the bottom of the bridge carry the heaviest loads, supporting the entire mass of steel above them. These cords consist of 4 multi-layered steel ribs connected by diagonal latticing, designed to act as a single unit. If the latticing fails, the ribs separate. If the ribs separate, the cord buckles. If the cord buckles, everything collapses. The Quebec Bridge's design calls for compression cords of unprecedented size. The bottom cord in the anchor arm near the main pier, designated cord A9L, has a cross-sectional area of 842 square inches. It carries millions of pounds of compressive force. The latticing that holds its four ribs together must be perfect. It isn't. Theodore Cooper, the consulting engineer hired in 1897, increases the allowable stress limits beyond any established standards. Normal practice calls for compressive stress limits of 14,000 pounds per square inch. Cooper specifies 21,000 pounds per square inch for normal loading and 24,000 pounds per square inch under extreme conditions. He develops his own formula for allowable compressive stress based on the slenderness ratio of members. His formula produces stress allowances higher than modern standards by 8% across critical load ranges. Cooper's reputation silences objections. He is one of America's foremost bridge builders, author of pioneering specifications for steel railway bridges. When government engineers question his stress allowances, Cooper's authority prevails. The specifications are accepted without protest. The bridge will be built to Cooper's standards. It will fail by Cooper's standards. The warnings arrive months before the collapse. In June 1907, workers notice that compression cords do not align properly. Pre-drilled rivet holes fail to match up. Cords deflect at their midpoints, bending under loads they should carry easily. On June 15th, Inspector Norman McClure reports to Cooper that cord A3R and cord A4R show deflections of 1/4 inch. Cooper dismisses this as a pre-existing condition from fabrication. On June 21st, cords A7R and A8R also show deflections, then cords A8R and A9R, then A8L and A9L. By early August, cord 7L and cord 8L bend 3/4 inch. Workers report the bends. Supervisors argue about their cause. Peter Slopka, the chief design engineer for the Phoenix Bridge Company, fabricating the structure, insists the bends occurred at the fabrication yard. Norman McClure, Cooper's on-site inspector, insists the bends occurred after installation under stress. McClure writes to Cooper, "One thing I am reasonably sure of, and that is that the bend has occurred since the cord has been under stress and was not present when the cords were placed." Cooper proposes a third theory. He suggests the cords were struck by suspended beams during erection. McClure investigates and finds no evidence of impact damage. The argument continues. The work continues. On August 27th, McClure measures cord A9L again. The deflection has increased from 3/4 inch to 2 1/4 inches in less than 2 weeks. The opposite cord, a 9R, bends in the same direction. The pattern is unmistakable. The most heavily loaded compression members in the entire bridge are buckling. What are your thoughts on corporate responsibility in disasters like this? Share your perspective in the comments below. The Quebec Bridge is not the first cantilever to fail. In 1879, the Tay Bridge in Scotland collapses during a storm, killing 75 people. In 1893, a center span of a bridge under construction over the Ohio River falls, though with no fatalities. Each disaster reveals the same truth. Cantilever bridges push steel to its limits, and engineers do not fully understand how steel behaves under extreme compression loads. The Quebec Bridge compounds every known risk. Cooper increases the span from 1,600 feet to 1,800 feet in May 1900, making it the longest cantilever ever attempted. The change increases loads by 7%. Weights are recalculated and found to exceed original estimates by 10%. The initial design weight is 62 million pounds. The actual weight reaches 73 million pounds. an 18% increase. Cooper accepts the higher loads rather than redesign. The compression cords are already fabricated. Much of the bridge is already erected. Starting over means abandoning the project. Strengthening the structure in place means admitting the design is flawed. Cooper chooses to continue. He does not order testing of compression members, stating, "There is no machine or method existing by which any such test could be made." This is false. Testing facilities exist. The Quebec Bridge Company eventually secures funds for testing. Cooper rejects the idea, saying too much time has been wasted already. The schedule matters more than safety. The deadline matters more than testing. Economy matters more than lives. Cooper mandates that construction proceed. The workers return to the bridge. Quebec City depends on the bridge. The workers depend on their wages. The Kanawake Mohawk community supplies 70 skilled ironworkers to the project, men renowned for their fearlessness at heights and their skill with structural steel. 33 of them work on the bridge on August 29, 1907. They are fathers. 24 are married with children. They send money home to Kanawake, supporting families who cannot afford to lose them. They know the bridge is bending. Some workers refuse to report for several days in mid-August when the deflections worsen. When they voice concerns, supervisors reassure them. Edward Hoare, chief engineer for the Quebec Bridge Company, tells them the bridge is safe. Cooper's authority backs this claim. The workers return. They need the wages. Their families need the wages. Quebec City needs the bridge. The economic pressure overwhelms the visible evidence. The cords continue bending. The work continues. On August 27th, one foreman halts construction, refusing to allow men onto the bridge until the deflection issue is resolved. McClure immediately travels to New York to consult Cooper in person. On August 28th, with McClure away and Cooper unreachable, Hoare reverses the stoppage order. In a note to Cooper, Hoare writes, "The moral effect of holding up the work would be very bad on all concerned, and might also stop the work for this season on account of losing the men. The concern is not safety. The concern is schedule. The concern is losing workers who might quit if construction halts." Work resumes on August 28th. 86 men return to the bridge. On August 29th, at 11:20 in the morning, McClure meets with Cooper in New York. They discuss the deflections. Cooper finally grasps the severity. He drafts a telegram to the Phoenix Bridge Company office in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania. "Add no more load to the bridge until after due consideration of facts. McClure will be over at 5 o'clock. Cooper sends the message to Phoenixville at 1:15 p.m., trusting they will relay it to the construction site. He chooses not to send the warning directly to Quebec, believing the chain of command will act faster through Phoenixville. The telegram reaches Phoenixville at 1:15 p.m. The Phoenix Bridge Company's chief engineer is absent. The message sits on his desk. At 3 p.m., the chief engineer returns to his office. He reads Cooper's telegram. He schedules a meeting for when McClure arrives at 5:15 p.m. At the Quebec Bridge construction site, work continues through the afternoon. At 5:30 p.m., cord A9L buckles. The latticing shears its rivets. The 4 ribs separate. The cord fails. Load transfers instantly to cord A9R on the opposite side of the bridge. A 9R buckles. The anchor arm twists. The main pier remains standing, but everything south of it, the anchor arm, the cantilever, the suspended span, 19,000 tons of steel, tears away. The structure does not collapse vertically. It rotates, pivoting on the failed cords, tipping sideways. Steel beams whip through the air. Rivets explode like bullets. The cantilever arm drops 150 feet, slamming into the river with a sound heard 6 miles away in Quebec City. 86 men ride the bridge down, 75 die, 11 survive with broken bones, crushed limbs, punctured organs. Some men vanish entirely, bodies never recovered, lost in the wreckage on the riverbed. The disaster takes 15 seconds from first buckling to final impact, 15 seconds to kill 75 men, 15 seconds to destroy the longest cantilever bridge span ever attempted. The destruction does not end at the riverbed. The wreckage contaminates the St. Lawrence for 2 years while crews attempt to clear it. Untwisted steel protrudes from the water, hazards to navigation. Bodies surface weeks after the collapse, bloated and unrecognizable. Families in Kahnawake receive news slowly, confusion compounding grief. 33 Mohawk ironworkers dead in a single afternoon, more than died in World War I, World War II, and the Korean War combined from that community. The Kahnawake Reserve loses fathers, brothers, sons. Widows struggle to survive without wages. Children grow up without fathers. The community marks August 29th as a day of mourning for generations. The economic impact spreads beyond Kahnawake. Quebec City's bridge, its economic lifeline, lies in ruins. The Phoenix Bridge Company faces lawsuits and bankruptcy. Theodore Cooper withdraws from engineering practice, his reputation shattered. He lives in seclusion until his death in 1919, and 2 days after the Prince of Wales officially dedicates the completed Quebec Bridge, a bridge Cooper designed but never saw finished. 75 men die on August 29, 1907. 86 workers are on the bridge when it collapses. Only 11 survive. Of the 75 dead, 33 are Mohawk ironworkers from Kahnawake. Many bodies are never recovered, lost in the twisted wreckage at the bottom of the St. Lawrence River. Some are found weeks later, downstream, carried by the current. Families hold funerals for empty caskets. Memorial services fill churches in Kahnawake and Quebec City. The dead are commemorated with photographs, collages of faces produced by local photographers, distributed to grieving families. The images show young men, skilled workers, breadwinners. They show faces that never came home. The Quebec Bridge collapse is the worst bridge construction disaster in North American history. It kills more workers than any other bridge failure on the continent. The death toll exceeds the 1958 Second Narrows Bridge collapse in Vancouver, 18 dead, the 1967 Silver Bridge collapse in West Virginia, 46 dead, mostly motorists, and every other major bridge failure in Canada and the United States. It remains unmatched in its human cost among construction disasters. The victims are memorialized in Kahnawake with annual ceremonies. In 2006, the community begins a year-long commemoration of the 99th anniversary of the disaster. In 2007, on the 100th anniversary, survivors' families gather at the bridge site, placing wreaths into the St. Lawrence River above the wreckage still resting on the riverbed. The bodies of the workers remain there, entombed in steel. The investigation begins immediately. Canada's Governor-General appoints a royal commission of 3 civil engineers, Henry Holgate of Montreal, John George Gale, Carey of Campbellford, Ontario, and John Galbraith of Toronto. Their task is singular: determine why the bridge collapsed and who is responsible. They spend months examining wreckage, interviewing witnesses, reviewing calculations and correspondence. Their report, published in 1908, spans over 200 pages plus 21 appendices. It is a model of forensic engineering investigation. The commission concludes, the collapse of the Quebec Bridge resulted from the failure of the lower cords in the anchor arm near the main pier. The failure of these cords was due to their defective design. Theodore Cooper bears primary responsibility. He mandated unusually high allowable stresses. He increased the span from 1,600 feet to 1,800 feet without requiring full recalculation of loads. He accepted an 18% weight increase without redesign. He rejected testing of compression members. He refused an independent consultant to review his work. He remained in New York throughout construction, never visiting the site, relying on telegrams and reports from subordinate engineers who lacked authority to contradict him. The Commission also blames the Phoenix Bridge Company for inadequate design of the latticing on compression cords and for poor communication during the crisis. They blame the Quebec Bridge Company for failing to appoint an experienced chief engineer and for loose supervision of the work. But Cooper's name appears repeatedly as the central figure. The Royal Commission writes, Theodore Cooper, consulting engineer of the Quebec Bridge and Railway Company. The failure cannot be attributed directly to any cause other than errors in judgment on the part of Mr. Cooper. Cooper never faces criminal charges. Neither does anyone else. The disaster is ruled an engineering failure, not a criminal act. No one serves jail time. No fines are levied. The Phoenix Bridge Company survives financially. Cooper survives too, living in retirement until 1919. Dying 2 days after the bridge he designed finally opens to traffic. Redesigned by other engineers, built to different standards. Heavier and stronger than anything Cooper would have approved. Why does the Quebec Bridge collapse? The immediate cause is buckling of compression cords A9L and A9R. But buckling does not occur in isolation. It occurs because the design is flawed. It occurs because Cooper mandates stress allowances 8% higher than safe standards. It occurs because no testing of compression members is performed despite funds being available. It occurs because Cooper increases the span by 200 feet without full recalculation. It occurs because the bridge's actual weight exceeds design weight by 18%. It occurs because warnings in June, July, and August are dismissed or explained away. It occurs because economic pressure overrides safety. The Quebec Bridge Company needs the bridge to restore Quebec City's commerce. The Phoenix Bridge Company needs the contract to remain solvent. Theodore Cooper needs this project as the crowning achievement of his career, the longest cantilever bridge in the world, bearing his name, securing his legacy. Everyone involved has financial or professional incentives to continue construction, despite visible evidence of danger. The workers notice the deflections. Some refuse to work. They are reassured by supervisors. They return because they need wages. When the foreman halts work on August 27th, Hoare restarts it on August 28th because the moral effect of holding up the work would be very bad. The concern is not morality. The concern is momentum. Stopping work means admitting something is wrong. Admitting something is wrong means delay, redesign, financial loss, reputational damage. It is cheaper to continue. It is faster to continue. The decision to continue kills 75 men. What industrial disaster topics would you like us to cover next? Let us know in the comments. The Quebec Bridge disaster changes engineering forever. Following the Royal Commission report, bridge specifications are rewritten across North America. Allowable stress limits are reduced. Compression members are tested before installation. Independent review becomes standard practice. In 1914, the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials is founded, establishing standards for highway bridge design. In 1921, the American Institute for Steel Construction forms, advancing research into steel behavior under load. These organizations develop design codes based on empirical testing rather than theoretical calculation alone. The Canadian engineering profession adopts the iron ring ceremony inspired by the Quebec Bridge collapse. Engineers graduating in Canada receive an iron ring worn on the pinky finger of their working hand, forged, according to tradition, from steel salvaged from the Quebec Bridge wreckage. The ring serves as a reminder of the responsibility engineers bear and the consequences of failure. The story may be apocryphal, but the symbolism endures. In 1911, the Canadian government takes over the Quebec Bridge project. They hire new engineers. They redesign the structure with compression cords nearly twice the cross-sectional area of Cooper's design, 1,941 square inches versus 842. They reduce allowable stresses to 14,000 pounds per square inch. They conduct extensive testing of all compression members before installation. They complete the anchor arms and cantilevers by 1916. Then, on September 11, 1916, as thousands watch, the center suspended span falls into the river while being lifted into place from a barge. A casting in the lifting apparatus fails. The 5,000-ton span sinks to the riverbed, coming to rest beside the wreckage of the first bridge. 13 workers die. The lesson is painful. Even with improved design, construction of massive structures remains lethal. The government orders a third attempt. The suspended span is rebuilt and successfully lifted into place in 1917. On December 3, 1919, the Quebec Bridge officially opens to rail traffic, 32 years after the Quebec Bridge Company was first incorporated. It remains the longest cantilever bridge span in the world, 1,800 feet between supports. It stands today, carrying rail and vehicle traffic across the St. Lawrence River, but it stands as a memorial as much as a bridge. The wreckage of the first bridge still rests on the riverbed below, entombing the bodies never recovered. 75 men died so that engineers would understand the limits of steel under compression. 33 Mohawk ironworkers from Kahnawake died so that Theodore Cooper's ambition could reach across the St. Lawrence River. They died because economic pressure overrode engineering caution. They died because warnings were dismissed. They died because no one with authority was willing to halt construction and admit the design was flawed. The Quebec Bridge stands today as the longest cantilever bridge span ever built. But the cost of that achievement was paid in August 1907, when 75 men fell 150 feet into the St. Lawrence River and the steel that was supposed to hold them up buckled instead.